What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mic Check podcast. This is T-Word, the People's Champ. You're now entering the booth. Today, we're going to talk about boxing. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We do appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you for helping this channel grow. We'll continue to bring you great content. Now, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Over the weekend, Oscar De La Hoya did a side interview and also posted a picture referencing himself, Terence Crawford, and Bernard Hopkins in what appeared to be some type of meeting at the Golden Boy headquarters. Now, what this means in black and white is that there's a potential opportunity for Terence Crawford to align himself with an experienced promoter who can help him negotiate any remaining big fights that might carry him through the rest of his career, or at least the next couple of years. I'm not time stamping how long Bud will last. I just don't see a lot that he probably will want to have to do if he can achieve undisputed at the welterweight division. Now, that being said, Oscar De La Hoya explained that he has several fighters in the welterweight division that will be good fights for Terence Crawford, including Alexis Rocha, who was actually fighting that night, Virgil Ortiz, who has a fight coming up at the end of April against Imanta Stanionis for a belt. And then there's also Blair Cobbs on that side. And then there's a couple other fighters that are ranked in the top 15 or 20 that are also with Golden Boy at 147. All this says is that he can lay out a slate of winnable fights for Terence Crawford and align him with an opportunity to get a couple of belts, depending on what happens with Errol Spence. Let's get into the details of that. So Spence is the current proprietor of the WBC, WBA, and IBF welterweight belts. Terence Crawford has the WBO belt and is a promotional free agent. He's also probably looking for some representation otherwise, because it sounds like there was some confusion with his attorney when he was trying to negotiate with Errol Spence before. Okay, so now that we're all up to speed on that, let's talk about where Golden Boy can actually help Terence Crawford. The first thing they can do is give him some bargaining power when he goes to the table to talk to Errol Spence again, because now you're backed by a promoter who also has a financial backing of the network DAZN, which can put you in a better position to make bigger demands and ask for the things that you want, as you believe that you have an A-side resume, even if you don't have an A-side resume at 147 pounds. All right. Now, you also have Jerron Boots Ennis floating out in this scenario with the IBF belt. Keep that in the back of your mind, okay? Here's some reasoning that I came up with why Golden Boy and Terence Crawford might find themselves married, at least for the very near future. Oscar De La Hoya can position Rocha, who he had a cut in his last fight, so he probably can't get back into the ring until around May. Funny thing is, Terence Crawford is going to be doing mandatory for his WBO belt around sometime in May. If they can strike a deal pending Rocha passing the physical, guess what? He can strike a fight with the first fighter in line on his ticket to face Terence Crawford. The best thing that De La Hoya can do is potentially put Crawford into a contract for 2 or even 3 fights. Here's the lineup that I predict. You've got Rocha in May, with Stanionis and Ortiz fighting in April. Both these guys, Crawford and Ortiz, if victorious, will have a WBO belt and a WBA regular belt. Those two gentlemen will be on track to get into the ring in late July or sometime in August to go ahead and settle that. Now, what that means is Crawford becomes a WBO regular champion, and now he can be mandated to fight Errol Spence if he's still the WBA super champion, or if he's somehow vacated, then now Terence Crawford gets elevated to full champion or fight some type of eliminator and gets elevated. So that leaves 2 belts out in the open. If Errol Spence is vacated, now Jerron Boots Ennis is the full IBF champion, and there's likely a vacant WBC title. And depending on the results of Spence and Thurman, you may have either, if Thurman wins, he's the WBC champ. Now he could book a fight with either of those guys. Or if Errol Spence wins and vacates, now Thurman will likely fight either Jerron Ennis, or he could fight Terence Crawford for that WBC belt. I know it sounds like musical belts or musical chairs, and it is. However, all of a sudden, a division that's been stagnant for 2 to 3 years is suddenly moving forward because now the belts are changing hands. This is the best case scenario, in my opinion, for Terence Crawford if he has no intention of fighting Errol Spence, because at Golden Boy, he's guaranteed at least 2 fights against highly ranked welterweights that will also be considered somewhat of mandatory, or at least a positional mandatory, meaning he's trying to unify when you look at Virgil Ortiz. These are also winnable fights. If he needs one more fight while he waits on the belts to be decided on the other end, he could probably fight someone like Blair Cobbs and give him a shot at the WBA and WBO belts, because he'll be elevating through those ranks as long as he doesn't lose in the interim. Then you'll see maybe a renegotiation. Oscar De La Hoya keeps Terence Crawford in-house, and then he can fight Jaron Boots Ennis, and then maybe Keith Thurman, if Keith even sticks around, if he wins a belt. He may just want to be a two-time champion and then go ahead and retire with the belt, or maybe do one last cash out against Crawford, but he's going to ask for 15 million plus. I can almost guarantee it. What it sounds like to me is the meeting that likely happened between De La Hoya, the executioner, and Crawford is, we want to align multiple fights for you, but we also want the option to get you in a third or fourth fight that's going to unify the belts that aren't in-house with us. That's probably the best case scenario. That's what I think happened in that meeting. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Crawford sign a deal with them in the very near future and then get a fight going. Now, what I also don't like about this deal is that it means that we're almost certain not to get Spence Crawford, simply because this is too long of a wait for Spence to get that fight, because he already said he wants to get out of welterweight. And if he knows that Crawford is not going to be accessible because he's going to have Rocha and Ortiz and potentially another fight lined up, he's not going to wait around to chase the WBO belt, and he's going to vacate and head to 154 and begin his campaign there. If that happens, I'm okay with it. I've kind of given up on undisputed for Spence at 147. I think he has an outside shot at 154 because those belts are probably going to be in a couple man's hands. So he'll be able to get a couple fights and maybe at least get a chance at the belts, if not win them outright and become undisputed at 54, right behind his stablemate Jermell Charlo. For Terence Crawford, if he wants to fight Errol Spence, he's got to negotiate to where De La Hoya gets that fight next. As soon as Spence is clear, Bud can fight Rocha, and then he's got to get him in that fight with Errol, and then maybe he circles back to Ortiz, because Ortiz will be the WBA regular, and if Terence Crawford can win, then that puts him as a mandatory. So, in my opinion, these are the ways that I think things can play out. But it's going to be interesting over the next few weeks, because if we get a surprise signing of Terence Crawford, then I think all bets are off for undisputed at 147 for Errol Spence. So you guys tell me what you think. This has been the Mic Check Podcast. I'm exiting the booth. It's T-Word. Until the next time, peace.